Okay, so I'm shooting this movie a little bit in reverse. This is the instrument cluster out of my 1992 Toyota Hilux diesel right-hand drive imported from Japan. The speedometer would go up to 60 kilometers an hour every time the truck moved and then just sit there. And when the truck came to stop, it would drop back to zero. There was two capacitors, this one and this one, that went right there and there. You can see the capacitor symbols. And you can see the bottoms of these caps are blown right out. That's just to do with age and drying out and all that sort of stuff. So I've got two new capacitors I'm going to replace and see if it fixes my problem. I'm going to put everything back in reverse and show you how this all goes back together. I would have shown you how to take it apart, but it's already apart. Okay, here's the two new capacitors. Actually, I bought three. One's a 10 microfarad and one's a 100 microfarad. That's what the old ones were. That's the 10, or sorry, that's the 100, and that's the 10. And they're electrolytic, so they're polarity sensitive. Voltage doesn't really matter. These new ones are good for 65 volts. These old ones are good for 25 volts. Voltage doesn't matter in a capacitor. It just tells you how much it can withstand. And in a 12 volt system, if the old ones are rated for 25 and you put 65s in, it's just not going to hurt anything. That's why it's a little bit bigger. Polarity sensitive, as long as it physically fits, that's the main thing. So I wrote on the board here, right there, I wrote a 100 for this one and I wrote a 10 for this one. So the 100 goes here, the negative side goes towards the edge of the board. So put the two leads through. Okay, I've got the two caps put in their spots. One goes there, one goes there. Negative side out, negative side out. 100 microfarads, 10 microfarads, 105 degrees Celsius, 105 degrees Celsius. So they're an exact match to the ones that came out. I've just bent the leads over a little bit. And you get your soldering iron. Handy dandy super duper glasses. That's it. It's all soldered back together. Clip off the extra pieces of lead with some little clippers, and I'll reassemble this. Okay, the next thing I did was put on the trip portion, and the main thing is just make sure that the pin is centered on its. It's got a hole where the speedo pin for the indicator goes on. Make sure it's centered and it clips in here and it clips in here. Same way you took it off, because you'll have had to have taken it apart. It breaks really easily because mine's a 1992, so you got to be careful of that. So I got that piece securely put back in place, and I think I'm going to put a little dab of silicone where it's a bit broken, so it can't just fall apart through vibration. So I will put a dab of silicone right in there to lock it in place. And with silicone, at least if you need to take it apart in future, you can just dig that out and take it apart again if you have to. This clip held, these two clips broke, so I'm siliconing that. But it's actually quite solid. I don't think it'll come apart, but I don't want it to accidentally vibrate apart somewhere down the line and have to do this all over again. So I'd rather just put a blob of silicone on there now. By tomorrow morning it'll be hardened up. Okay, the next thing to do is to put on the light reflector plate. It distributes the light around the back to all these numbers. When this goes on top, all the numbers will light up because of this plate. The way it takes the light from above there and moves it around. So you put it on, same thing, same way it came off. When it's on correctly, you'll see that this hole and this hole line up when it's correct. So that's the right way it goes. And now you can put in the two little black screws that you took out. One goes there, one goes there. You don't want to get oily fingerprints on this black because once it's sealed back in the case, you can't clean it. So just make sure you have clean hands when you do this. Okay, and the last thing to do before you plop this back in here is to put on this needle. This just pulls off just by strict shear force. So when it's all together and it's when you're first taking it apart, it's like this. You have to very carefully grab underneath both sides of it and gently pull up straight up, and it will pull off. Mine broke. This piece broke apart inside. Luckily it all just kind of snapped back together, but there's one small break, which there's no force on this thing. I did this a long time ago. It broke also like 5 years ago, and it's never going to come apart. So it kind of snaps back together. You'll be able to figure it out, but you have to be very careful taking it off because it can break. What I did to get it off before was I used a pair of side cutters, and if you put them like this, because they're wedged on either side, and gently close them, it'll put even force and pry this up and take it off evenly. If you use your fingers and if you pull sideways or something, you'll bend the pin or damage it. So that's one way, is use side cutters and make sure they're nice and flat on here and let the wedges do the work, and it pulls up nice and straight. The trick now is the pin is resting on its 0 point. You want to get this indicator to also rest just against this pin ever so slightly. Otherwise your speedometer won't read correctly. So it was a bit tricky. I remember doing this in the past. It was a little bit tricky. What you'll want to do is have the width of the pin. You want to just turn it. See right now where I have it? If I let go, it comes to the other side of the pin, the wrong side of the pin. So that's a bit too far. So I'm going to put it a bit more forward. Now I'm not pushing very hard, just trying to seat it. Now when it comes back, only it doesn't quite hit the pin. So you want to line it up directly on top of the pin and then turn it forward just a bit. Now when it comes back, it's going to rest on the pin rather than resting on the spring mechanism in here. All the way. Now when I let it go back, it rests on the pin rather than the internal spring mechanism. And I think it's pretty much seated. Okay, now it's seated. Okay, it's seated all the way on. It's exactly where I want it. So if it's out, it'll only be out 1 kilometer out of the, because it's less than 1 needle width. If the pin wasn't there, it would go another half a needle width farther down, which is next to nothing. Okay, now this piece sets in here. The pins line up that I showed you before. That pin and that pin line up. Now's your chance to get any greasy fingerprints off of here. Okay, so that's good. Turn this upside down. The 2 screws, remember when I took it apart, right here and here are shorter than all the rest. Okay, and then the rest are the long ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. Should do it so as you can see something, I guess. So the 4 long screws go here. Two short screws go here and here. 4 long ones. That's a crappy screwdriver. Get the right one. Don't have to be overly tight. Snug is good. They have lock washers on them. It's all plastic. Okay, that's reassembled. I was thinking about looking at my tack. Which I just might do. Because if it has any capacitors in it, they'll need to be changed also, almost guaranteed. So now would be a good time to look at it while it's apart. If it's oh yeah, there it comes. So let's have a quick look at the tack board. Make sure it doesn't have any of the rotten caps in it. Okay, and the tachometer should drop out. We'll have a quick inspection here. It does have an electrolytic cap in it. It has a couple of electrolytic caps. And they're not bulged. It has one there, which is not bulged or burnt. And it has one here, which is also not bulged or burnt. So, looks like we got lucky on this board. I don't know why the other board overheated those caps and wrecked them. But this one looks fine. Yes, because when they go, they bulge out on top. Okay, so I'm going to put this back in. I'm going to call it good. All parts are assembled. Make sure these plates are in their positions. Everything looks good. We can now go ahead and put on the front face plate again. Everything's in place. It just snaps on with these clips. It's easy to take off if you have to. Make sure you line up the hole with the trip meter reset. I wouldn't force anything. This old plastic is pretty brittle. Okay, so we seat all the back ones, bottom ones. Get the top ones started. Snap them in. Snap the bottom ones in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's all good to go back in the truck. Okay. And it's a bit cold outside, so I'm not going to put it in the truck tonight. But it's ready to go.